Leia's spaceflight, The Last Jedi. When the bridge of the Resistance flagship is destroyed by a First Order blast, Leia Organa is blown into open space. Against expectation, she opens her eyes and draws herself back to safety using the Force. The scene is staged in slow motion, with her body drifting serenely, hand outstretched toward the ship. The controversy came from the gap between what audiences had seen Leia do before and what this image required them to accept. In the original trilogy, she is shown as Force-sensitive, able to sense Luke and connect through empathy, but never once demonstrating active telekinesis. Moving from subtle sensing to controlled self-propulsion in vacuum felt abrupt, especially without a training arc to justify it. The physics of the moment also strained credibility. Unconsciousness in vacuum should come within seconds, yet she remains functional and precise. The staging emphasized calmness and grace rather than strain, giving the impression of effortless empowerment. To some, this elevated Leia at last, as a Skywalker fully revealing her power. To others, it felt like a miraculous tableau, out of step with how the Force usually looks on screen, because the film never clarifies whether it was instinctive or the result of years of practice. Viewers filled the gaps themselves, and opinions polarized accordingly. Holdo and the Lightspeed Ram, The Last Jedi. Vice Admiral Amilyn Holdo inherits command after Akbar's death. She withholds her escape plan from most of the crew, including Poe Dameron, fueling suspicion and eventually mutiny. Her strategy is revealed only when she pilots the flagship alone, turning it toward the pursuing fleet and jumping to lightspeed through the supremacy. The result is a silent, stylized impact that devastates the First Order. The maneuver was striking, but it introduced problems for the wider saga. Hyperspace had always been transit, not a weapon. To suddenly depict it as devastating invited questions of why it had never been attempted before. Later, canon explained that conditions were rare and precision nearly impossible, but the film itself gave no such limits. In the moment, it read as a super weapon tactic, pulled from nowhere. Holdo's secrecy also drew scrutiny. Compartmentalization makes sense in some military contexts, but inside a small fleet under constant pursuit, refusing to share with trusted officers looked contrived. The mutiny it provoked cost lives and resources, making the resistance appear fractured by design. Visually, the silence and frozen imagery framed the maneuver as mythic sacrifice, something apart from ordinary tactics. That heightened artistry helped make the scene iconic, but also reinforced its sense of being a narrative device first and a tactic second. Canto Bight, The Last Jedi. While the fleet is being hunted, Finn and Rose depart for Cantonica in hopes of disabling the First Order's hyperspace tracker. The city of Canto Bight is presented as a glittering casino playground, filled with elites profiting from the war. Finn and Rose witness cruelty toward racing animals, children trapped in servitude, and arms dealers supplying both sides. In the end, they fail their mission and even accelerate the First Order's assault after DJ's betrayal. The subplot was designed to broaden the scope, showing that the war was not just soldiers versus Empire, but also systemic exploitation. For Finn, it is meant to reveal the larger stakes of the fight. For Rose, it grounds her moral convictions. But because the sequence consumes runtime during a survival chase and resolves in failure, many saw it as expendable. The tonal shift from tense pursuit to casino comedy weakened the urgency, and the lack of tactical payoff left the themes feeling detached from the core narrative. Supporters appreciated the social commentary and world building, but detractors saw a lecture that stalled the story. The divide shows the difficulty of inserting thematic detours into high-pressure plots. Without a tangible win or clear connection to the main conflict, a side quest risks being judged as distraction. Rey's Rapid Mastery. The Force Awakens / The Last Jedi. Rey's journey from scavenger to Jedi candidate is marked by unusually fast skill progression. In her first encounters, she resists Kylo Ren's mind probe, reverses it, performs a Jedi mind trick, and defeats him in combat despite never having been trained. In the following film, she advances further, wielding the Force and the lightsaber with growing ease, after only limited guidance from Luke. Earlier, heroes like Anakin and Luke required long apprenticeships and visible setbacks before mastering similar feats. Rey's sudden capability compressed that process into hours of screen time, shifting her arc from learning to revelation. This thrilled some, who saw it as a sign of destiny and raw talent. Others found it implausible, flattening suspense by removing the question of whether she could succeed. The films frame her abilities with reverence. Symbolic poses, swelling music, slow camera moves. This underscores her role in the myth, but also highlights the absence of visible trial or cost. For many, the story felt like one of unveiling innate greatness, rather than achieving it through struggle, which clashed with the apprenticeship tradition that had defined the saga. Luke's disillusionment. The Last Jedi. On Ahch-To, Rey discovers a Luke Skywalker very different from the one audiences last saw. He has severed his connection to the Force, believes the Jedi should end, and admits to nearly killing Ben Solo in a moment of fear. His arc builds not toward a return to the battlefield, but toward a symbolic projection that buys time for the Resistance and inspires legend before costing him his life. This portrayal was divisive because it contrasted so sharply with the optimistic hero of the original trilogy. Luke once believed that even Darth Vader could be redeemed, yet here he abandons hope after a single crisis. For many, that leap felt unearned, with insufficient explanation of how decades of growth collapsed into despair. Others embraced the choice, seeing it as an honest deconstruction of myth. Heroes age, fail, and doubt themselves, and Luke's rejection of the Jedi Order reframed him as a critique of blind hero worship. His projection on Crate restored his legend in a new form, not as warrior, but as symbol. The rift between those who wanted triumphant Luke and those who valued his deconstruction shows how expectation shapes reception. Without a carefully built causal bridge, subversion risks looking like betrayal rather than development. The Female Bridge Command. The Last Jedi. During key Resistance command scenes, the camera repeatedly emphasizes a lineup of women, Holdo, Diace, Connix, and others, making critical decisions. Their grouping, reinforced by deliberate framing, stands in contrast to Poe's sidelining and Akbar's quiet removal. To many viewers, this was a simple reflection of galactic parity. Women had long been leaders in the saga, from Mon Mothma to Leia, but the concentration and emphasis of this particular lineup stood out, creating the impression of an intentional tableau. The film never remarks on the composition, yet the camera's focus was enough to suggest significance. Some welcomed the imagery as normalization, overdue after decades of mixed or male-heavy command visuals. Others saw it as deliberate inversion, women poised and correct, men reckless and demoted. Because the shots linger and cluster, interpretation became inevitable. This moment demonstrates how strongly framing choices can shape audience response. Even without dialogue, visual emphasis can be read as a statement, celebrated by some and criticized by others. The Broom Boy. Epilogue. The Last Jedi. After the battle on Crate, the film closes not on the heroes, but on a stable in Canto Bight. A child recalls Luke's stand, then casually uses the Force to pull a broom into his hand, holding it like a lightsaber as he looks toward the stars. The image carries a clear message. The Force belongs to everyone, not just bloodlines or elites. The legend of Luke has spread, inspiring ordinary children across the galaxy. It is a visual statement of democratization and hope. The problem was that this thread was never pursued in the next film. The Rise of Skywalker returned to legacy bloodlines and mythic duels, leaving the egalitarian vision hanging. For many, the epilogue became a symbol without payoff, a flourish disconnected from the ongoing story. Some embraced it as a poetic close, a reminder that legends endure. Others saw it as thematic messaging, overtaking narrative continuity. Without follow-up, it became one of the most debated codas in the saga. Janna and the Defectors. The Rise of Skywalker. On Kef Bir, Finn meets Janna, a former stormtrooper who defected along with her entire unit when ordered to massacre civilians. She now leads them as free fighters, striking independently at the First Order. This expansion reframed Finn's backstory. His choice was not unique. Conscience can emerge even among indoctrinated soldiers. It suggested the seeds of moral rebellion within the enemy's ranks. But the reveal came very late, with little screen time to explore. For some, it diminished Finn's singularity without showing the mechanics of mass defection. Janna and her people function more as a thematic symbol of awakening than as a fully integrated faction in the war. Many valued the representation and the broadening of perspective. Others found it compressed and underdeveloped. The lateness of the addition made it look like emblematic diversity rather than narrative necessity, and reactions split accordingly. The female pilot montage, the rise of Skywalker. In the Exegol battle, Zori Bliss returns with reinforcements, editing highlights her alongside other women in the cockpit, cutting between their faces in quick succession. The intent was to show the galaxy uniting, diverse allies arriving from all corners. Yet the specific sequencing of shots drew attention to gender, making the moment feel like a constructed grouping. For some, it was an overdue acknowledgement of the women already in the fight. For others, it resembled the deliberate hero lineups of other franchises, and felt out of step with Star Wars' usually organic presentation of inclusivity. The montage carried no dialogue to explain itself, but visual grammar alone was enough to spark debate. It exemplifies how even seconds of editing can be read as commentary. For some, it was celebratory and natural. For others, it was staged and distracting. They fly now, the rise of Skywalker. During the chase across Pasaana, stormtroopers launch on jetpacks. Poe shouts, "They fly now." Finn echoes it, and the line punctuates the scene with comedy. The problem was less the troopers than the reaction. Jetpack units had long existed in Star Wars canon, and characters as experienced as Poe and Finn should plausibly know of them. Their astonishment was clearly staged for audience surprise. The repeated line slowed the chase and turned a dangerous pursuit into a meme. For casual viewers, it worked as a funny beat. For lore-aware fans, it broke immersion. The moment crystallized a broader criticism of the sequel's tone, humor injected into life-and-death sequences, sometimes at the expense of credibility. Though minor, the line became symbolic. It shows how even brief exchanges can encapsulate deeper frustrations when they prioritize banter over world-building.